Hey guys, Stealth here. With all these 10v10 tactical games going on, there seems to be an increasing demand for actual deck reviews of how you can construct one of these 10v10 tactical decks. So I thought I'd take you through some of my decks. The first thing that you need to know about these decks is that I specifically determine that these things are for tactical. So you can see tact, Dutch, German, motorized, tact, US 10v10 air precision, tact, artillery. Most of the time in a deck or a match like this, in one of those tacticals, so very, very low income, very, very low starting points. Let's say you have about 200 points to actually be able to spend, 300 points including a CV. You won't be able to spend more than, well, maybe 400 to 500 points in a match, so any single unit is going to have to carry its weight. First thing that you need to do is not go with a general deck. Go with a very, very specific deck so that the unit that you want to use, and I'm saying unit more than units, is going to have the maximum veterancy possible. This one is a Dutch-German motorized deck, and it's specifically designed around using the Corps Mariniers, the Dutch infantry units, the Fallschirmjäger, and some of the fire support squads, such as the Vuurploeg 95 or the Deckungsgruppe. So in order to maximize the efficiency of these units, I have them at Elite. And this is only something you can do with a motorized deck, and I believe a mechanized deck is going to give you Veteran, but I'm not entirely sure. Motorized works perfectly because it means that all of these guys are going to be nice and cheap in the Fuchs transports. And as for the rest, I have this deck fully kitted out with 55 activation points, but I never expect to be able to bring in all of these units. Now, I'm not going to do a complete deck review, just to give you a quick idea of why I'm picking the units that I'm picking. The motorized deck has the intent of taking over the forests over on, depending on where you're starting, the left or the right flank. It's the Anna zone or the Alpha zone. The Fallschirmjägers are very good at dealing with armor. The Corps Mariniers with their 15-man elite trained squads are very good at dealing with enemy infantry. These guys I can deploy for 90 points total, and I have something that can cover most threats, short of Spetsnaz. So for Spetsnaz, with their RPO, I'm going to have something that can defeat the armor that can defeat the HE value of them. And that is something that I can do with this very cheap tank. AMX 13 FL15, this is the Dutch tank. High rate of fire, it has some armor which is just enough to survive the HE blasts. And with a high rate of fire, it can do quite a lot of damage to the Spetsnaz. It is very, very vulnerable, but it only has to kill one group of Spetsnaz in order to break even, in order to get that 35 point value. If that one is at that stage too expensive, I can always take it down a notch and go for the Kanonenjagdpanzer, the German anti-tank vehicle. It has more armor, 3, 2, 1 and 1. Its rate of fire is almost as good, and is only 20 points. Now, I don't expect this thing to take out any tanks, and that's why I'm not exactly using a higher end anti-tank vehicle. I'm just having it there to help suppress enemy infantry. If that is too expensive still, I go for the Weasel 1 Mark 20. And yes, I always complain and bitch about the low autonomy, the 200 kilometer autonomy of these things, but I usually have one of the supply trucks nearby anyway to keep these things going. So with an autocannon, again, they're not particularly likely to do anything to transports or to do anything against tanks whatsoever, but they're just there to use that autocannon against infantry. And 15 points is the cheapest I can get an autocannon for in a motorized deck. As for helicopters, these things I rarely, if ever, use because they don't have the right amount of veterancy. They're just there as a sort of fallback option. And same for the aircraft. They're there, and I get them at the maximum possible veterancy, especially the units that I need accuracy on. But for example, these guys, I have these at veteran, mostly to make sure that the accuracy from the rocket pods goes up. And these two are quite an effective unit at destroying enemy infantry, which is all that this deck is about. Because in a forest you're not that likely to come up against a tank, and if I do come up against one, I always got my Fallschirmjägers. So that's one of the ways that I set up my motorized decks. Now, another deck that I really like using is the Danish support deck. Now, when people or my team speak see me rolling out this deck, they go, "Oh Christ, Stealth is bringing out his automatics again." And they're absolutely right. That is the only purpose why I have a Danish support deck. It's very, very important to have this tactical designation, otherwise I could be accidentally taking this thing out into a 2v2, a 3v3, a 4v4, and all I'd be good for is providing very cheap support units and a few automatics. So make sure that if you have a deck that is specifically set up for a tactical, that you designate it as such, because a standard deck is just not going to do as well as those improved decks. The automatic deck, again, has mostly focused around the automatic. These things are bloody expensive, 80 points, if you micromanage them well. And if you micromanage, let's say, 2, maybe 3 of these units, that's usually all you can buy in a game, then you can get a lot more points in return. Especially shooting down seed aircraft just after they have flown over your automatic is going to be very, very handy. The EOTS iHawk is in there in case I want to shoot down jets at greater range without being counter-killed by the seed aircraft. The problem that I have with these things, of course, is the low amount of missiles. After 3 missiles they're going to need a resupply, and they are not particularly cheap to resupply either. Aside from that, they're also extremely slow off-road, at 25 kilometers per hour. They're one of the slowest units off-road in the game. And this is pretty much all that I use from this deck. I don't use any other unit, so the rest of them are just there as filler material, in case that I might need them. So you can see a very, very cheap, I'm not going to play. I'm using a very, very cheap mortar. As far as tanks goes, I have the most expensive Centurion, but it is really not that impressive. Vehicles, I might end up using a Laro Tow 2, but only in the situations where I know that I can get more than 45 points. That is the key. Is either getting a kill for 45 points or just denying the enemy an area. And if I can do that at a 45 point price tag, then perfect. The PNMK is, again, one of those units that I rarely, if ever, use, because the autocannon is very handy, but it's something that the automatic can do much, much more lethally at a greater range, and it has more armor. So I wouldn't be using this thing anytime soon. And those are the only units that I use from this deck. All the infantry, all the supports, all the tanks, all the vehicles, the reconnaissance, I just don't use it, because I'm going to be relying on teammates to do my spotting. I'm going to be relying on friendlies with actual good tanks to do the tanking in the field, and I'm there to provide AA. And this is a deck that I usually only take out when I'm coordinating with friendlies on TeamSpeak, because I want to be sure that there is at least one player who's going to be going in with a super heavy. And for example, you can see me going in with Sniper Fire, with Spect, Sparky. Guys like these will use a super heavy, and I will back them up with the AA. Let's have a look at another deck. Let's go for a Red 4 deck. Let's have a look at this one. This is another tactical deck, Air, USSR Air Force. Mostly I'm going to be using this deck to provide air cover with one jet. Just one. And it can be any of the jets that you prefer, but note that it is a specific airborne deck, meaning that I have way more airplanes available than, or more aircraft tabs available than normally, and that all of these units are at elite. All of them, save for the Yak, or correction, this one is at elite as well, just can get 2 of them for that price tag. You want to get the maximum possible veterancy out of these guys to maximize all of their stats, so that they're going to be the best possible efficiency in a game. For USSR Air, I recommend the Su-27PU. These things are exceptional at shooting down enemy aircraft. It's just that, when you're using these, be prepared to just sit around and wait for a large portion of the game. Because if the enemy sees you shooting down one jet, maybe 2, they're going to start reconsidering their options. And while you are doing your exact job, which is deterring enemy air presence, it does mean that you will not be likely to get a kill. Or at least not as many points as you might like. The autocannon can be used to strafe, but if they shoot you down, you lose 180 points, and strafing is usually not going to be effective against anything that is much more heavily armored than infantry. So I really would not recommend doing strafing runs. Units that are definitely nice are the MiG-29S. Decent ECM. They have some short-range missiles that you might be able to use against a longbow if you see one of those. And these 4 500 kilogram bombs can be used to stun and damage tanks, defeat lightly armored infantry transports, and kill off infantry. Other units of note are the Su-25T. Very expensive at 200 points. They have this autocannon which does 4 armor penetration, and it gets, or the closer it gets, the more damage it's going to be doing. It gets 16 semi-active Vickers missiles. This is critical. You want to be able to keep line of sight with your target. If you don't have that, then your missile's going to miss. And it has these short Wimpel missiles, these short-range AA units, that can be used again against longbows. Helicopters, again, find these things at the best possible veterancy. The Mi-28s are both at veteran. If I can get one at elite, I would do so. The Akula, one at elite. I'm not taking 2 at hardened, because if I lose my 1 Akula, that is pretty much the only helicopter at this price tag that I'll be able to afford for the entire game. That is how expensive these things are. But you can also use, for example, the Mi-4A to great success. The trick with these decks is always finding that sweet spot. Is this unit going to perform well enough to make back its own price tag? If so, field it. If not, don't go with it. And if you do go with it, and this deck I think has way too many aircraft and too many units that I will never use, such as all of these vehicles, they're big on. I'm going to take 9 of these at veteran. Why veteran? Because I want to have that additional accuracy. I want these rocket pods to be landing on top of enemy infantry with the best possible accuracy to have the greatest effect and get me all of those points. And again, I don't care if I have 57 out of 60 activation points. Some decks that I run have 20 out of 60 activation points or 20 out of 55. It's perfectly fine because you won't be able to field all of these units anyway. So we covered motorized, we covered support, we covered air. What else do I use? Tactical armor, USSR again. I put up a video not long ago where I used this tank, the T-80UM. It is an armored deck, first and foremost, so that's why I again have these units at elite. The T-80UM, great gun, very accurate, nice armor penetration on it, and unlike the T-72BU, which is what you see most people using, the missile range is greater. It has 2800 meter range versus 2625. Accuracy is better. This thing has the same accuracy on the move that the T-72BU has when it's sitting still. Armor penetration is better, and you are going to be paying for that in the armor department. Frontal armor is a bit less. Side armor is less. Top armor and side and back armor are less. So be wary that this thing, while it hits hard, can get hit very hard as well. Thing of note is that it's 15 kph off-road faster than the T-72BU. You can see in the description one of these videos, or a link to the videos that I have put up recently, where you see me using this thing to zip around and get extremely lucky, but just don't get hit by cluster bombs because of that 80 kph off-road. All of these other units are there as filler material. I might need them at some point, but I'm not that likely to. And all of these units are at the highest veterancy. Motorized 90 in a BMP3 at hardened, which is the only high level veterancy that I can get. Concours M, if I want to defeat enemy armor at ranges or at a different area of the map. The 25-point Concours M with 5-point transport, the MTLBV, can be used to great success. You only need to hit something that is worth more than 30 points. Igla N, in case you want to defeat any kind of enemy helicopters. It's not that good against airplanes because the range just isn't quite there. But for 25 points, if they hit a helicopter, let's say they hit them twice to kill them, then that is gonna get you anywhere in the range of, let's say, 40 to 130 to 150 points. And as far as support tab, most of the time I'll be able to field one of these, the T80UM, and one of these, a Tor. Because the biggest threat to my tank is air. So always think, what is going to be my prime unit? T80UM. What's going to be the biggest threat? Air. Could be a helicopter, could be an airplane, I don't care. The Tor will take care of anything. Provided that it's not getting shot at by seed, because this thing is radar guided. Be wary. Now I do have one MSTA-S in this deck. I have never ever fielded this unit in a tactical, not when I was using this deck. All the other tabs, again, usually not used. Sometimes I use an Mi-4A to provide rocket pod support for my tank. In case I'm dealing with larger groups of infantry, the tank will have difficulty chewing through those at the same pace that the Mi-4A can. But keep in mind that if I'm using something that's in the price tag of 165 and then an AA unit, I'm not going to be having too many points left, if any. And that's why most of the time I will not be able to field an expensive helicopter. Whereas you might want an Mi-24P in order to deal with enemy infantry, it's just simply too expensive. And that's why I use the Mi-4A. Other decks, let's have a look. Tactical, Dutch-German Motorized, we covered that one. US Air Precision, this is one that I also enjoy using. This is one of the best units that you can use in a tactical game, the Nighthawk. It can defeat any super heavy. It doesn't even matter which angle you attack at, it can defeat any kind of super heavy. And I have seen people use this thing with extreme effect. People get over 1,000 points in a tactical game, which may not seem like much in a standard gameplay, but in a tactical that's a huge score, simply by using the Nighthawk. The biggest threat to the Nighthawk is radar-guided and infrared AA. Enemy fighters are usually not going to be there in time to catch this thing, but this thing, if it gets a hit, it's going to pretty much guarantee to kill anything that comes up against. Other very good air units from the US airborne deck, I'd say, are the 15 Deagle, which is the 15D Eagle. 4 1,000 kilogram bombs will level any kind of infantry and vehicles. Tanks is something that they're not that good at using, or not that good at defeating. Fighting Falcon with cluster bombs can be used against tanks, although if you have a US airborne deck like this, I would prefer using something that can do that job better, such as the Nighthawk, the Deagle, the Thunderbolt. This is something that I haven't actually tried out yet. I still intend to do so. You can see it is at Elite. All of these units are at the lowest possible availability and the highest possible veterancy to maximize their chances of survival and killing. The other units in this deck, I rarely if ever use. Only use units that are boosted by your deck type. So units from the Recon tab, while they are nice, they're not boosted. If you want to boost Recon, you're going to have to go with a Motorized deck. The units that are boosted in an airborne deck is infantry, a little bit, you get a little bit more veterancy out of them. Helicopters and airplanes. So only pick 1 or 2 units that you're going to be using that specific match and focus your entire deck around those. It's not like those standard 2v2, 3v3, 4v4 and possibly the large-scale 10v10s. I don't care if I can field Avengers or Sheridans. I only care about that lonely Nighthawk, maybe backed up by a little bird for providing infantry support. That's all I'm going to be able to afford anyway. If you are using an expensive helicopter in a deck like this, or in a deck such as the USSR Airborne, either bring your own fob, or make sure that you have a fob available. Otherwise, that helicopter, for example the longbow, with its missiles is going to run out soon, and all of a sudden you're going to find yourself being very, very ineffective during the rest of the match. Your 150 point helo is suddenly not going to be that impressive. And talking of which, I see that I skipped over this one, it should be at Veteran. I think that covers most of the stuff from this specific deck. To cover it up, let's go for European Airborne. Actually, no, let's go for one of the Red 4 decks. East Germany, for example. It's usually better to go for an East 4 combination or an Eastern Bloc deck with a specific specialization. So motorized, armored, whatever. Provided that you can mix and match these units. I, for one, have a specific East Germany, a specific motorized deck for Poland, but this is mostly because I enjoy the challenge, not because it is very useful. So in a situation like this, for Eastern Germany, again, I have not filled out all of the points, and the only units that I'm going to be using are infantry and maybe some Recon, because again, the Recon have a high veterancy. And units that you may normally just skip over can be very effective in this situation. The LSTRs, of course, are something that you are not likely to skip over. They are some of the best units that you can field in a 10v10 tactical. FJB, similar. But also be aware of the type of transport that you're bringing these guys in. Because while normally an SPW of 80 points might not be, or sorry, an SPW of 15 points might not be very significant, in a tactical it will be. This transport, for only 15 points, has a 20% accuracy on a machine gun. You may be going, well, yeah, it's a machine gun, big deal. It is a big deal. In a 10v10 tactical, you want to have that machine gun there to provide additional fire support to any kind of friendly that you might encounter. If your, let's say your LSTRs are engaging enemy infantry, you keep the SPW-80 at greater range, let's say 1200 meters. It's going to fire at about 20 to 25% accuracy, and you're going to be suppressing the infantry. Yeah, I have seen this thing even kill command vehicles. Of course, not command tanks, but command vehicles that the SPW-80 could get to faster than the LSTR. So with infantry, always be wary of the type of infantry itself and their transport. And finally, make sure they are elite. All the units that I'll be using from this specific deck are going to be Recon units. SPW-40A, again, it is a unit that you might normally skip over. Same for the UAZ. But in a situation like this, if you just want a cheap machine gun to suppress enemy infantry, just consider Navy SEALs or Fallschirmjägers at a range greater than, let's say, 900 meters. This thing is perfect. It is only 1/3 of the price tag of the unit that you're targeting, be it SEALs or Fallschirmjäger, and they still have a machine gun that is going to tear those units to shreds. And that pretty much covers it. So, to quickly rehearse, 1, pick a specific nation or combination. So let's say I want to have a tactical deck for blue. I'm first going to say, okay, what do I want to use? Okay, I'm going to be able to use the Stormers from the United Kingdom. You could go for either UK or Commonwealth. I'm going to go for pure Commonwealth. I'm going to go, pure UK. I'm going to go for support. I don't need an arrow bonus, so this is going to be, let's say, UK Stormers. The units that I'll put in are a FOB, although I rarely have ever used those. A Stalwart to resupply these things. A Rover. I don't need anything else there. A support. 5 Stormers. Some units that I might be able to use in tandem with the Stormers are mortars, because they can engage any ground and air and airplane threat pretty effectively on their own. So let's go with a couple of these smoke units to provide either fire support or smoke for a retreating Stormer. Infantry, maybe some Gurkhas to scout ahead, but they are airborne, which is something I don't particularly like. So I'd more likely go with the Fusilier 90. Let's take 14 of those, maybe one of those. Tanks. Maybe use a Chieftain, but unlikely. I'm much more likely to use a Scorpion Light, because it's nice and cheap, and for 20 points you only really need to kill a couple of infantry units and you get the price tag back. Recon. The Fox is very effective in a 10v10 tactical, so 10 of those. The Ferret, not so much. It is 10 points cheaper than the Fox, but the machine gun is really, really quite bad. Green Jackets, not that likely, but if I use them not in a helicopter, I'm likely to use them in a Pinscour. Vehicles, maybe the Avery. The Rarden for the autocannon. Helicopters, these things are pretty decent, the 20 mils. And air, you can pretty much in all decks get an air superiority fighter at elite. So you never know when you might be able to trick the enemy into thinking that you're going to be fielding support units, and instead you fly out a Eurofighter. That's another trick that you can use. Let's go with the Harrier GR3 with rocket pods, and maybe a Sea Harrier, and that's all I'd be using. So it's 22 point deck out of 60, simply because I won't be using any of the other units. It's a very, very bare bones deck. So pick a specialization, pick a unit that you want to use, and then take that unit, take that deck, and wreak some havoc among the enemy. That's all you need to know about deck building for 10v10 Tacticals. Now get out there, let me know in the comments how you're doing and what decks you have created. And if you have any ones that you want to share, just copy the deck code and put it down in the comments in the description. Thanks for watching, hope it was useful to you. If it was, please give it a like, and otherwise just leave me a question in the comments so that I can help you out further. Thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed, see you soon for the next one.